This is a 1946, 1.5-ton Chevrolet Shorty school bus. Obviously it's built on a 1.5-ton truck chassis. This is one of the shortest configurations they made. There is one window shorter than this, believe it or not. And this one's only 21 feet bumper to bumper. Originally came with a 90 horsepower 6-cylinder engine, about 140 pounds of torque. It now has a Cummins turbocharged 4BT 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel. That's 130 horsepower at 330 pounds of torque. That coupled with a brand new state-of-the-art Allison 6-speed double overdrive transmission and a newly rebuilt Dana 80 rear axle. Calculations that I've done, I should be able to run about 65 miles an hour at about 1,800 RPM, which is the sweet spot on this diesel engine. Should be able to get well over 20 miles to the gallon out of it. So its idea is to convert this into a long-range, long-haul RV cruiser for one. This is my retirement home. When everything else goes to hell and I need a place up in the mountain to hide out, this is going to be it. The springs and stuff I thought I was going to have fits. A company called Eaton, Detroit, been around forever. Called up and I thought I was going to have to go into all this detail about this is a 1940. I tell her it's a 1946 Chevrolet school bus. She goes, what wheelbase? The woman answered, she knew everything I was talking about before I could answer the question. Huh. Well, you've been doing this a long time, hadn't you? Oh, yeah. She knew exactly what I needed as far as shackles, corrected me on a couple of things. Well, you want to do this, you want to do that. I added 350 pounds to the front end to compensate for the weight of the engine. This thing weighs a whole lot more than a Chevy 6-cylinder. This thing weighs 750 pounds. But moved back, and with the extra springs, it should ride all right. We'll find out here before long. Having to rebuild virtually everything on it, disc brake system. I'm building a steering system from scratch because the old original was all mechanical. Gearbox fit on the inside of the frame. With the engine here, you can't go on the inside of the frame. So I've got a 93 Isuzu NPR truck gearbox, which is a real heavy-duty gearbox that I'll be able to hook up to a hydraulic boost. And I've got a pump on this engine, so I'll have power steering. But I got to make all of the pieces, the pitman arm, everything, the steering shaft, all of that's got to be built from scratch.
And how long have you been a fabricator?
I wasn't until I started this project. I'm still learning. I've built stuff all my life. I've built many motorcycles, racing bikes, and that kind of thing. But I'm way in over my head on this one. And I've called in a couple of favors with people that are really good fabricators that help me with doing these engine mounts and the transmission mounts and some of the critical stuff. But most of it's not really that complicated. It's pretty straightforward. I've got a couple of little Miller welders. I keep one here and I got one at my other shop. Been doing welding for 20 years. I don't call myself a welder. I can melt metal together, but I have too much respect for the profession to call myself a welder. I've seen guys who can really weld. I've never had anything come apart on me, but they're not as pretty as what these guys do. This interior on this thing is really small. In fact, in order to get a little bathroom area built in, you notice this one wheel well's got that dip in it.
Mm-hmm.
I had to cut that out, fabricate some sheet metal, and weld that in to give myself some clearance so that I'll have room to put a little wet shower combination toilet right there. Be a little dividing wall right at the front of where this window is blanked out. These two windows will be open. There'll be a little kitchen area with a combination refrigerator freezer that goes underneath it on rollers that pulls out. It's all 12 volt and a little cooktop up on top. There's going to be a sofa bed over on this side The back will come right up to the bottom of the window. It'll all pull out, slide down, and provide a little sleeper area here. Big storage cabinet back here. Most of the back end open. There's not going to be a whole lot of room. Air conditioning is going to be via window unit. There is a area to cut into the roof up here. All 14 gauge steel, and an 8,000 BTU unit, window unit fits inside of there. Exhaust out the rear. There's a stainless steel screen in there, kind of like you use on range hoods. They keep birds and bugs and that sort of thing out. And it'll exhaust the hot air out this way, blow the cool air on the inside.
Wow.
As small as this thing is, even with nominal insulation, should keep it plenty cool.
Sure.
I've got a little 3,000 watt Honda generator that'll go on a rear deck. It'll be sitting right over here on this corner of the deck. All the electrical will come in here. House batteries are right here. There'll be 3 Lifeline 150 amp hour batteries. So all the electrical will be contained in this area and then distributed into the bus. This deck, all parts of which are cut and laying over here, this will come out 24 inches, and then there'll be a fold-up section that comes up another 24 inches. So when I'm docked, drop it down. I'll have a little back patio here, place to store some extra thing, but it'll also provide room for the spare tire carrier, which is down here in the building. These tires weigh about 140 pounds. They're a pain, and I know some people that have dualies say you've got 2 spares all the time, but if I'm going to be out in the boonies, I like having a real spare. So it's going to go on this device. I'm going to use a crank, pull this thing up and down. Tire will sit on here. It'll crank up and fit in right underneath this first section of the deck. Lock into place. If I do need it, then I can crank it down, take it off, do what I need to do with it. It'll wind up with new glass all the way around. I've got RV windows, dual pane, sliders with screens that fit in on the 4 front windows. The little quarter moon windows, I'll put new glass in. Be new glass in these rears and the windshield. Obviously new rubber seals and gaskets everywhere.
Do you have any curved glass on Do you have any curved glass that's going in, or is it all flat? Is it? Okay.
Got lucky on that one.
Yeah.
But everything on the body is curved, and in some places on 2 or 3 axes. You get back into these areas and forming sheet metal is a nightmare. I had to cut all of this stuff out. I'm going to have to cut this section out, replace all of this section here. I'm in pretty good shape on the other side. I'm going to eliminate these little insets. Used to have the tail lights and things in it. I'm going to flush these things out to provide myself a couple of more inches on the inside for electrical panels and that sort of thing. In fact, I've even looked at maybe cutting it across here, bringing it out 2 or 3 inches, and bringing it straight down just to have a little more room in there. But roof rack, like I said, all the body panels are fabricated and ready to go on. That'll be the last thing to go on. Window deletes are all 14 gauge steel. They're welded in place, sealed up with body seam sealer. Had to fabricate little closures for the tops of the windows. These old school windows used to open down into this wall, which meant these things were totally open, and rainwater just filled the inside of these panels. All of these body brackets are new galvanized. There was only one of these I managed to salvage. The rest of them was crumbled. There was nothing left, and there was a rust line underneath the torpedo belt along here that I couldn't see until I took it off. But it was easier just to cut that off, replace all the sheet metal, then try to patch around it.
Are you doing any underbody storage, or?
There is a 44-gallon, which will be strictly gray water tank now. I'd originally planned on a black water, gray water combination. I've got all the bracing and brackets. It fits right up underneath here. That'll give me enough that between the shower and sink and that sort of thing. It'll take quite a while to fill that thing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I can dump it virtually anywhere because it's just gray water. It won't have any of the nasty stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said, putting the sheet metal on will probably be the last thing because it's so much easier to work on and under this thing with it off. Nothing too fancy. One or two little cameras to help with visibility. Fenders are all stacked over here. They're in remarkably good shape. Hood, all the major components were in very good condition. A couple little minor wrinkles that some Bondo will take care of. I'm going to replace the rub rails. Got to sandblast the back side of those things, but they'll go back on just for appearance sake more than anything else. The hood is all in great shape. One of the few things I had to replace the inner fenders. One side was rusted and had a lot of stress fractures through it. I found a pair from a 1940 truck which are different, but the louvered portion is identical. So I just cut the louvers out and replaced the bad portion of mine with them. Now I just have to remember how all this stuff goes back together after years of it sitting around like this. That's pretty much the story.
Well, how long? What's your estimated time of on the road?
My target date is about 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
And you've been doing it 4 years now?
Yep. Most of the big stuff I've got worked out. Like I said, I've never built a steering system. I don't even know what the components are, let alone the hydraulics and stuff. Got virtually everything in place for that. In fact, I just worked out the steering linkage from the wheel. Normally, an Isuzu would only have one of these, but because I have the engine moved back so far and I have to angle everything around the frame, I had to get a second one so that it will bolt onto the gearbox, and the other end goes up and connects to the Isuzu steering wheel and shaft. And unlike most other units, the element that fits in here is not all steel. It's like a steel rod with some kind of plastic coating or something, so I couldn't weld on it.
Right.
So I really had no option but to go with a stock version of this. And this little piece of metal from here to here, they're really proud of. It's like $300.
Wow.
Crazy. Thank you, Isuzu. But then I had to have a machine shop modify this thing to get the length on it right. And this is actually a bearing surface. Because this thing's going to be at an angle like this, you got to have a support bearing to keep the whole thing from wiggling back and forth.
Huh.
Hot rodders do this all the time. They may have 2 or 3 different U-joints and routing going around, all sort of things. So having contact with some old hardcore rat rod builders was a benefit.
Yeah. What else? Anything?
And I don't even know, I can't remember what all parts I have anymore. There's a cooktop up there. I bought a cooktop. There's the exhaust tip. I have all stainless steel exhaust.
Wow.
That's going on this thing. I have custom downpipe made that's got, should have really good flow. The old one came off the turbo in immediate, real tight 90 and down in another 90. Pretty typical because of the room that I've got there now. It comes back, goes down at 45, another 45, and then I've got the rest of the components to bring it out right in front of the driver's side rear tire. But had to route it up and over the drive shaft, which another thing I have yet to fabricate. It'll have to be built from scratch, like everything else.